Cool.
Is this an abundance or is this an harmony unit? With the capability of providing our entire team of up to 20% of their maximum energy, could Huohuo stand a chance competing against our current sustained powerhouses Luocha and Fuxuan? Hey guys, Mr. Pokke here, back with another video. On today's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we will be discussing Huohuo, our premier wind sustain, packed with tons of utility that pushes her above and beyond a normal sustain. Her kit is very complete, being one of the best cleansers in the game, with HP percentage scaling to improve her durability, effect resistance and speed traces, and extremely useful team-wide energy regeneration on top of an attack percentage buff. Players looking to grab a sustain unit if they missed out on banners like Luocha and Fuxuan would definitely find value in her addition to your team, and this guide will go through her playstyle, energy threshold, eidolons, relics, and lightcones. Her team composition is much more diverse, so that will be explained in a separate video. And with that out of the way, let's get into today's content. Starting off with her character kit, her basic deck does 50% of Huohuo's maximum HP to a target enemy. Nothing too special about this, but it is going to be frequently used due to sustain's need to generate skill points for our entire team. And since this is scaling with Huohuo's max HP, then it is not too bad compared to, say, other HP scaling units like Bailu, who still have their basic attack scaling with attack instead of HP. As for skill Talisman Protection, it dispels one buff from a single target ally and immediately restores this ally's HP by an amount equivalent to 21% of Huohuo's max HP plus 560. At the same time, restoring HP to the adjacent target ally by 16.8% plus 448. So assuming that Huohuo's maximum health right now is at 5,000 with no other healing boost from outgoing healing boost chairs or passerby 2-piece, then this will heal for 1,610 and 1,288 respectively. In contrast, comparable to Bailu, another HP percentage abundance unit, Bailu's multipliers are 11.7% plus 312 3 times, with each subsequent time having a 50% reduction per heal. So as you can see, Huohuo's skill is a very strong healing output, but do note that the cleanse is only on the main target and our adjacent target will not be able to get any cleanse. But this will not change the fact that Huohuo is still our current best cleanser in the game, and we'll be discussing about that in her talent later on. But talking about her ultimate first, Tail Spiritual Domination, at a whopping 140 energy cost, Huohuo regenerates energy for all allies by an amount equivalent to 20% of their respective maximum energy, and at the same time increases their attack by 40% for 2 turns. So this Huohuo's team-wide energy regeneration is often equivalent to a single turn earlier when it comes to using our ultimate, and as such, this will completely change our entire team's energy threshold and energy cycles, vastly improving their skill rotation fluidity. This is most notable with high energy costs, notably units with more than 140 energy, such as Qingque, Yanqing, Imbibitor Lunae, and Jingliu, restoring 28 energy, which is almost equivalent to them using a single skill. That being said, her personal ultimate cost is 140, so energy regeneration will be absolutely crucial for Huohuo if we want to see her getting high uptime on this very powerful ultimate. And we will be going through this, and there is a way to ensure that Huohuo always can use her ultimate every 3 turns in the energy threshold section. Now do know that the energy restored by her ultimate, it is not affected by any other energy regeneration sources, similar to Ting Yun's energy regeneration. Now lastly, talking about talent Possession Ethereal Metaflow, after using a skill, Huohuo gains Divine Provision, lasting for 2 turns. This duration decreases by 1 turn at the start of Huohuo's turn, and if Huohuo has Divine Provision when ally's turn starts or whenever an ally uses their ultimate, it restores health equivalent to 4.5% of Huohuo's maximum HP plus 120, and at the same time, every single ally with less than 50% HP will get healed an additional time. When Divine Provision is used to heal allies, if the ally has any debuff, it will dispel 1 debuff, and this effect can be triggered up to 6 times whenever Huohuo uses a skill. So this can be comparable to Fuxuan's Matrix of Persistence. You can only dispel 1 crowd control per skill usage, and for Huohuo's case, this can be triggered up to 6 times, and then we have to use a skill again to reset this debuff cleanse. So this ability is what makes Huohuo basically our best cleanser in the entire game. The healing amount from this talent is moderate. Assuming that Huohuo is at 5,000 HP, this is basically roughly equivalent to 345 without healing boost. But do know that this healing, this 345, it is unlimited. So technically, allies could heal for repeated repeated amounts as long as it is within 2 turns of Huohuo using this skill. So even if we do not have any cleanse stacks, right, even if we completely use up the 6 stacks of cleanse, the heal will still apply until sacrifice life ends in 2 turns. Talking about the cleanse, for up to 6 times, this Divine Provision can cleanse a single debuff, and no stacks will be reduced if there are no debuffs on our target, ranging from hard crowd control to softer ones like DOTs and speed debuffs. Since this happens at the beginning of the turn, it will take priority over DOTs, meaning that we will no longer receive any DOT damage. The DOT will be completely cleansed once Divine Provision kicks in. This stack will be reduced whenever it is our wearer's turn, or whenever we use our ultimate, or if it's less than 50% HP and there is a debuff. As long as there's no debuff, the stack will remain exactly the same. So once the stacks are used up, Huohuo needs to cast a skill again in order to refresh these 6 stacks of cleanse. Note that this only cleanses a single debuff, and it will always prioritize the most recently afflicted debuff. So for example, if your units got imprisoned in the previous turn and then they just got inflicted with a wind shear, then the cleanse will first prioritize cleansing the wind shear, and your units will still get imprisoned. So that is something to keep in mind. So with her abilities explained, moving on to her traces. Total mana traces tops off to 28% HP, 18% res, and 5 speed. And all of these mana traces, they are all excellent for Huohuo. Absolutely no wasted mana traces here. So really good in that department. Her first major trace, the cursed one, the chance to resist crowd control debuff increased by 35%. It is exactly the same as Luocha's A6 trace, but it is halved from 70% to 35%. It makes Huohuo less likely to get imprisoned, frozen, or entangled, any sort of this kind of like hard crowd control debuff, right? But that being said, effect rest is still an important stat for Huohuo as well as any sustained unit, just to reduce the probability of us getting inflicted, because this is not 100%. If we are going to be using broken kill, then the additional rest will help us trigger the kill's effect. Now, stress reaction to horror. Whenever Huohuo's talent is triggered to heal allies, Huohuo regenerates 1 energy. This is an extremely important trace to elevate Huohuo's high 140 energy cost, and this energy, it is impacted by energy generation. Note that this is triggered per heal, not cleanse. So theoretically, Huohuo could gain tremendous amounts of energy from this talent specifically, assuming that 3 allies move twice over 2 turns of sacrifice life and cast their ultimates once each. That would be equivalent to 9 additional energy over 2 turns. In reality, this number may be higher or lower due to action value advance like Jingliu, or higher speed by Asta, or simply more energy, we can cast more ultimates within a single time. So the number is not going to be extremely consistent. Note that for Silly Resurgence as well as follow-up attacks, they are not counter extra turns. You actually have to make sure the unit gets their turn or use their ultimate or 100% action value advance. And last major trait is going to be Fearful to Act. When the battle starts, Huohuo gains sacrifice life lasting for 1 turn. Now this effect will expire the moment Huohuo's turns begin. So this trait is really only useful if the enemies are really fast, if they are faster than Huohuo, and it damages your team. So it is not super important compared to the cursed one as well as a stress reaction to horror, but it is somewhat useful, especially if you're up against very fast enemies like the King Shadow, and we are going to be getting Memory of Chaos 12, so who knows how fast the enemies are going to be going forward into the future. And that will wrap it up for Huohuo's character kit explanation. Moving on to some helpful tips. Number 1 is Huohuo Benefits developed accounts more. Simply put, she is the representation of a rich gets richer. If a player can easily sustain their team with little skill point usage and wants the extra damage output from faster ultimates and attack buff, then Huohuo will be an excellent sustain unit since she essentially doubles as a harmony support. However, if players cannot sustain their team without using Huohuo's skill repeatedly, then it will be better off using another sustain like Luocha to ensure skill point income while still keeping the team alive. Note that for Huohuo, there are no emergency heals, and what I mean by emergency heals is whenever we use our ultimate as a sustain unit, we can give our entire team some form of shield or heal, and Huohuo does not have this. And even for Luocha, his ultimate does act as a slight emergency whenever Luocha's talent is up, but this is not the case for Huohuo. Her ultimate will not regenerate any health unless you got a signature Lightcone. So with this in mind, players do need to be much more mindful. You guys need to make sure that your accounts are well developed, you can tackle the content without spending too much skill points, and then you can really enjoy the extra damage and extra energy provided by Huohuo. Another tip is Huohuo's Divine Provision management for a permanent uptime. Note that for Huohuo's talent, it is refreshed whenever we use our skill. Considering how the stacks are reduced outside of Huohuo's turn, we do not need to preemptively use Huohuo's skill to refresh Divine Provision, unlike Fu Xuan's Matrix of Prescience. So for Huohuo, that's not the case. Simply wait for all of our stacks to be consumed and then use our skill accordingly. And this may occur faster or slower depending on how often the team uses the ultimate, how often the team gets inflicted with a DOT, or how many allies falls below 50% HP. But for the most part, it is very easy to gain this Divine Provision with a permanent uptime with Huohuo. And lastly, Huohuo is more skill point hungry than Luocha. It is somewhat comparable to Fu Xuan. This is somewhat related to the previous point. Huohuo's skill point consumption as a sustained unit, it is far greater than that of Luocha or even Bailu and Japat, since both of these units, Bailu and Japat, their ultimate acts as a sustain, but it is not the case for Huohuo. So players definitely need to be a lot more mindful with her skill point usage. And since Huohuo's talent only lasts 2 of her turns, assuming that the stacks has not been used up, her skill point consumption should be very similar to that of Fu Xuan, who has to refresh her matrix every 2 turns to gain more energy. Probably going to be using our skill every 2 turns in order to keep up with our buffs and also just generate more energy so that we can cast our ultimate more frequently. Moving on to Eidolon E1. This is going to be her game-changing Eidolon. Her Huohuo's E1 is ironically her strongest and most impactful Eidolon for a sustained unit. Not only does it extend Divine Provision from 2 turns to 3 turns, which drastically improves our skill point management, it also is a 3-turn 12% speed buff. Players having issues sustaining with Huohuo, as well as having difficulties hitting speed thresholds, should highly consider this. But that being said, in the energy threshold section, we are still going to be assuming that Huohuo uses skills at every 2 turns, so players do need to adjust accordingly as to when should we use our skill to Huohuo. But if you have Huohuo's E1, then you can essentially use the skill every 3 turns instead of every 2 turns. Now her E2 basically transforms her into Bailu, except it can trigger up to twice per battle instead of once. An excellent insurance plan, but it is not a necessity if players can manage the difficulties with proper unit and team building. Moving on to an E4, assuming that a full 80% increase in healing, a 5000 HP Huohuo will then heal for roughly and 2900 HP on the main target with the skill alone. Now this is unlikely going to be happening due to our talent triggering every single turn, as well as our ultimate usage, and with E2, since we previously managed to get ourselves the extra insurance, it is unlikely that E4 will make a significant impact on our gameplay. And lastly, her E6 truly transitions Huohuo into a harmony unit. And note that for E6, when healing a target ally, this works with a talent as well. So this creates an almost permanent 50% damage increase for every single unit. That being said, only the main DPS truly enjoy this damage percentage number, but it is still a very nice, very big buff for our main DPS to increase our final damage output. But in summary, for her Eidolons, E1 is going to be her most impactful Eidolon, and it does have more value than her signature Lightcone due to an abundance of Lightcone substitutes, and we will be going through the substitutes at the Lightcone section. But before talking about that, let us first explore Huohuo's energy thresholds, because this is one of the more important sections in our guide today. So for Huohuo's energy threshold, this is very complex, much more complex than our previous units because of a trace that generates 1 energy every single time her talent is triggered to heal, which means at every different team speed, every different enemy speed, it will affect our energy threshold income. Furthermore, abundance units also have an access to different light cones with energy regeneration effects, such as post-op conversation, as well as a signature light cone. So below is going to be the energy threshold summary. I do have a full document created by a very helpful villager, Revel, but I will only be showing the most optimal rotations, which guarantees a 3-turn ultimate using basic attack into skill into basic attack. Because for most situations, our Huohuo should be casting an ultimate every 3 turns, so there isn't really that much sense for us to just go through every single possible rotation, right? So based on the CN, this is going to be the assumption that we're going to be making. So 5 from the ultimate, 20 from using a basic attack, 30 from a skill, 20 from basic attack. The 3 multiplied by 4 is equivalent to 12 actions in 3 turns from 4 units, right? So this 3 multiplied by 4 is basically within 3 turns, how many actions are we going to be making, right? So CN assumes this to be 12, which is going to be a very average number. And then another 4 is going to be assuming that within those 3 turns, we're going to be casting our ultimate 4 times, so that's going to be another additional energy. And this 10 over here is going to refer to Huohuo getting hit at least once across every 3 turns. And the final 2 is going to be accounting for anomalies, such as if our ally actually fall below 50%, or if our ally have extra action value advanced, such as Ghost, Jingliu, or Susang, then we do have this extra 2 energy trigger, which brings us to a total of 103. Now, I know that this specific scenario is very niche. This simulation is going to be somewhat reliable, plus minus 2 or 3 differences here and there. So with this scenario in mind, here are the energy calculations. So it's gonna be, the first point is gonna be using her signature Lightcone at S1 or S3 post-op conversion, because they both give us 12% energy generation, right? And then we're gonna be using ER rope as well as Von Weg / Penacony for a total of 36.40% energy generation, bring us to a perfect 140.492, a perfect 3-turn ultimate. What happens if we were to not use Von Weg or Penacony and instead use like an S5 post-op conversion? So using the exact same rotation that I shown previously, we are going to be getting 35.4 instead of 36.4 energy generation, and this will leave us with 139.46, literally missing a single energy to complete this rotation. Now, of course, this single energy is really dependent on your speed as well as the enemy speed. Players could still run S5 post-op conversion while enabling Huohuo to run either Q or Fleetless to just give us a little bit more of a damage boost, right? So this is going to be pretty much almost exactly the same as the previous scenario. And then for the last scenario, if we do not want to equip Huohuo with any energy regeneration Lightcone, this is going to result in a 24.4% ER if we're still going to be using Von Weg and Penacony, and will result in us having only 128.13 energy here. So in this scenario, we do need Huohuo to get hit an additional time, or instead of using basic attack skill into basic attack, we do need to use 2 skills within 3 turns, which is not going to be optimal since now Huohuo is no longer skill point positive. So in summary, Huohuo needs every possible source of energy generation to guarantee or at least come close to a 3-turn ultimate. S5 post-op conversion cannot fully substitute a lack of Von Weg or Penacony unless our team moves really fast, or if the enemy damages our team very frequently, and then I'll just constantly dip below 50% HP and it will trigger more of our talent. For players not using an energy regeneration Lightcone, it is advisable to stick with the 4-turn ultimate to reduce skill point issue, which is going to be a much bigger problem if we want to instead force a 3-turn ultimate but come into skill point deficit. So the best case scenario is Huohuo using an energy regeneration Lightcone and they can still sustain the entire team so they can ensure our 3-turn ultimate. But if players cannot do this, then it is advisable to just instead cast our ultimate every 4 turns but still keep our entire team alive. Now moving on to a relic set, honestly for Huohuo, this is very straightforward. The first piece is going to be the best in slot for new players who requires more healing output from Huohuo to reduce the skill point issues from constantly using a skill, right? So that's going to be the 2-piece Longiverse with 2-piece Passerby. There is no need for 4-piece Passerby unless players want to speedrun a certain content where the additional skill point matters. But once a player can survive using Huohuo skill once every 2 or even 3 turns, then we can pivot into a 2-piece or even 4-piece Hackerspace. So for Hackerspace, the 4-piece effect works on Huohuo's ultimate. So this gives our entire team another minor speed buff just in case we need it. The additional speed from Hackerspace 2-piece also improves our skill point generation as well as ultimate uptime, which is generally just always good to have and appreciated by any support and sustain units. Moving on to a planetary 2-piece set, Von Weg and Penacony, as you guys can see from the energy threshold, is going to be really useful, especially if we were to pair Huohuo with a 12% energy generation from our Lightcone, which guarantees a 3-turn ultimate using that very specific scenario over there. But like I mentioned again and again, the scenario is really arbitrary and players do need to find out and mess around with themselves how often can we cast our 3-turn ultimate with the specific setup. But for the most part, giving Huohuo as much ER as possible is not going to be a bad idea, and the newly released Penacony is going to be quite useful if we are going to be using Huohuo with another wind carry such as Danheng, Blade, or even Sampo. Another option if we players do not want to use Von Weg or Penacony is going to be still the good old Fleetless and Q, and this will depend on situation. Q will be more ideal for normal crit ratio DPS, while Fleetless will be ideal for DOT DPS, and note that for Q, we do need 30 effect rest to activate. Then moving on to her main stat and substats, also a very standard HP sustain build. Outgoing healing is always preferred to HP percentage due to bigger heal increase, but this is also dependent on the player's substats. Right, so our chair is going to be either HP percentage or outgoing healing, boost is always going to be speed, rope is always going to be ER, and our sphere is always going to be HP percentage. And for our substat priority, we do want as much HP and speed as possible, followed by res and defense percentage just to make our Huohuo a little bit tankier, and then finally the flat HP and flat defense. And next, moving on to a Lightcone. So signature Lightcone is definitely going to be her best in slot, which grants her the much needed energy generation as well as transforming our entire team into mini sustain units by granting the 10% healing to a lowest health per ultimate usage. So this greatly improves Huohuo's usability, especially amongst new players, which may find Huohuo's healing lacking compared to, say, Luocha or even Fushui and Japat, right? Because unless we are going to be using our skill very frequently, we are going to need some additional outgoing healing to keep our team top up, especially for dire situation. S3 post-out conversations has exactly the same amount of energy generation at 12%, although S5 would not make it possible to cast a 2-turn ultimate, right? There's never going to be a single scenario where we can cast our Huohuo ultimate every 2 turns unless we give Ting Yuan's ultimate onto Huohuo. Although it does make getting 3 turns ultimates a lot more consistent and a lot more common than the scenario applied in energy threshold. Note that for post-out conversation, the ultimate outgoing healing is completely useless, just like Luocha. So the only reason why players are using this is just to increase Huohuo's ultimate uptime, and as such, players may face into some sustained issues because Huohuo is no longer healing as much as compared to other Lightcones. And this brings us to another substitute, which is going to be the new event Lightcone Hei over here. MiHoYo comes back with another S5 event Lightcone, and this time for abundance units with 12% max HP and 28% outgoing healing boost increase after skill usage. Now this is an excellent alternative for most players not pulling for Huohuo's signature, or if you guys don't want to use post-op combination, with both the stats improving Huohuo's healing output, which also indirectly reduces our skill point pressure since we now need to use less skills to keep our team healthy. Note that the outgoing healing boost, it affects all healing sources as long as you use it after a skill. So both our ultimate and talent is going to be healing even more once we use this Lightcone. And then for the final alternative, is going to be S1 time which for no one, as well as S5 perfect timing. They have even better values than the event Lightcone since they are after all gacha Lightcones compared to the free Lightcone given by MiHoYo. But if players have any of these two Lightcones, we can consider not running the event Lightcone completely, although the event Lightcone still has value if a player is using multiple abundance units. So in summary, Huohuo's signature Lightcone is not a must due to the huge amount of substitutes we have in our current roster, but it is still a very, very comfortable quality of life that also doubles as a mini harmony and abundance Lightcone. Post-op conversation is going to be recommended for players without survival issues, while the other alternatives are going to be recommended for players with survival issues, especially if you guys need additional heal. Now moving on to our last chapter today, just going to be a brief summary. Huohuo is one of the most complex team composition if we really want to take a deep dive due to how she completely changes the 3 other units energy threshold. We will be exploring this in a separate content, right? Take a look at maybe we can do a 2-turn Interluding ultimate, 2-turn Jingliu ultimate, as well as what the optimal rotation, all this kind of stuff. So this is going to be in a separate video. But in summary, Huohuo functions very well with any team, just like any sustain unit. But she functions even better with units that are missing the extra tiny bit of energy, especially for units with high ultimate cost, because the higher the unit's ultimate cost, the more energy is going to get refunded from using Huohuo's ultimate. And do note that Ting Yuan is also an extremely synergistic partner with Huohuo, because Ting Yuan gives us energy, and with Huohuo's ultimate giving Ting Yuan energy, Ting Yuan can then give our main DPS even more energy for an even faster energy cycle. If you guys are going to be running Huohuo, you're probably going to be running Ting Yuan on the same team. So here are some of the sample teams below, with Kafka with a DOT and Ting Yuan Huohuo for a standard DOT comp, Jingyuan Ting Yuan Topaz for a double follow-up dual DPS comp, as well as Jingliu Bronya Pella for a hyper carry comp. We can replace Bronya or Pella with Ting Yuan herself, but just to go to show, even without Ting Yuan, Huohuo can definitely still function, but ideally players should try to run Huohuo with Ting Yuan. And with that, we have come to the end of Huohuo's CN unit analysis. Let me know in the comments, are you guys going to be pulling for her? Are you guys going to be waiting for RGT or perhaps even version 1.6, right? If you guys would like to engage in further discussions, feel free to check out my Discord at Pokke's Village, where we have a very active community talking about Honkai Star Rail on a daily basis. If you guys would like to check out my stream, I will be streaming when the time this guide goes live, my pulls as well as testing Huohuo out on twitch.tv/MrPokke. Currently streaming roughly 3 times a week. Schedule will be updated on Discord as well. But with that, we have come to the end of today's content, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.